The morning sun cast long shadows across the training compound as Lieutenant Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical vest one final time. The Navy SEAL had been through countless missions, but today felt different. The air was thick with anticipation as his team prepared for what was supposed to be a routine marksmanship exercise at Camp Pendleton. Jake had earned his reputation as one of the finest marksmen in SEAL Team 6. His steady hands and sharp eyes had saved countless lives during his 3 tours in Afghanistan. At 32, he carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from years of elite training and real-world experience. His teammates respected him not just for his skills, but for his ability to remain calm under the most intense pressure. The training facility buzzed with activity as various military units rotated through their scheduled exercises. Today's session was designed to test long-range precision shooting under simulated combat conditions. Multiple firing ranges were active simultaneously, with different branches of the military conducting their own specialized training programs. As Jake's team moved toward their designated range, he noticed an unusual number of civilians in the observation area. Among them was a small group that seemed particularly out of place. A woman in her mid-40s sat quietly in a wheelchair, accompanied by what appeared to be her family. Her presence struck Jake as odd, but he dismissed the thought as he focused on the task ahead. The exercise began with standard protocol. Jake and his team took their positions at the 1,000-yard range, their Barrett M82 sniper rifles gleaming under the California sun. The targets were positioned strategically to simulate real-world scenarios they might encounter in hostile territory. Each shot had to be precise, calculated, and executed under time pressure. Jake settled into his firing position, feeling the familiar weight of his rifle against his shoulder. Through his scope, he could see the distant target clearly. Everything around him seemed to fade away as he entered the zone that had made him legendary among his peers. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat steadied, and his finger found its place on the trigger. The first few rounds went exactly as expected. Jake's shots found their marks with mechanical precision, earning nods of approval from his instructors. His teammates performed admirably as well, but there was something about the atmosphere that felt charged with an energy he couldn't quite identify. As the exercise progressed, Jake became aware of movement in his peripheral vision. Someone had approached the firing line from an unexpected direction. Training protocols were strict about who could be in the active shooting area, and Jake's instincts immediately went on high alert. He had seen too many training accidents in his career to ignore any breach in safety procedures. Without breaking his shooting stance, Jake tried to identify the intruder through his scope's peripheral vision. What he saw made him pause momentarily. It was the woman from the observation area, but she was no longer in her wheelchair. She was standing behind one of the shooting positions, holding what appeared to be a rifle of her own. The training exercise continued around them, but Jake found his attention increasingly drawn to this unexpected development. Something about the woman's posture and the way she handled her weapon suggested she was far from the civilian observer he had initially assumed her to be. Her movements were too controlled, too professional. A sharp crack echoed across the range, different from the rhythmic pattern of the ongoing exercise. Jake's experienced ear immediately identified it as coming from a different weapon, fired from a different position. The sound came from the direction where he had spotted the mysterious woman. The range safety officer's voice crackled over the radio, but Jake could barely make out the words over the continued gunfire from other positions. Training exercises were designed to be chaotic and realistic, but something about this particular moment felt genuinely unpredictable. Jake maintained his position, but shifted his attention toward the source of that distinctive gunshot. Through his scope, he searched for the origin of the round that had caught his attention. The woman was still visible in his peripheral vision, but now she was moving with a purpose that seemed entirely at odds with her earlier presentation as a casual observer. The afternoon heat was beginning to build, and sweat beaded on Jake's forehead despite his years of conditioning. His training had taught him to trust his instincts, and every instinct he possessed was telling him that something significant was happening beyond the planned parameters of their exercise. As Jake continued to scan the area through his scope, he began to piece together details that painted a picture far more complex than a simple training day. The woman's equipment, her positioning, and most importantly, her obvious familiarity with weapons handling suggested a background that extended far beyond casual interest in military training. The mystery deepened when Jake noticed that several of his instructors seemed to be paying special attention to whatever was happening in the woman's area of the range. Their body language suggested they were observing something planned rather than responding to an unexpected situation. Jake's mind raced through possibilities as he tried to understand what he was witnessing. Military training often involved surprise elements designed to test adaptability and decision-making under pressure. But this felt different. This felt personal in a way that routine training scenarios never did. The sound of that single, distinctive gunshot continued to echo in Jake's memory as he tried to maintain focus on his own assigned targets. His performance remained flawless, but his attention was clearly divided between his official duties and the growing mystery unfolding nearby. As the first phase of the exercise drew to a close, Jake knew he would soon have the opportunity to investigate what had captured his attention. The woman who had appeared so ordinary in the observation area was clearly much more than she had initially seemed, and the shot she had fired carried with it implications that Jake was only beginning to understand. The ceasefire whistle pierced the afternoon air, and Jake immediately set his rifle to safe before rising from his prone position. His knees protested slightly after the extended shooting session, but his mind was entirely focused on solving the puzzle that had been building throughout the exercise. The mysterious woman and her unexpected shot had created questions that demanded answers. As Jake secured his weapon and began the standard post-exercise procedures, he kept one eye trained on the area where he had observed the woman. She was no longer visible from his position, which only added to his growing curiosity. In his experience, people who appeared and disappeared during military training exercises usually had very specific reasons for their presence. His team leader, Master Chief Peterson, approached with the usual post-exercise briefing materials, but Jake could see something different in the older man's expression. Peterson had been a SEAL for over 20 years, and very little surprised him anymore. Yet today, there was an energy about him that suggested something significant was about to be revealed. Jake gathered his equipment and followed his team toward the debriefing area, but Peterson placed a hand on his shoulder, directing him away from the group. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Whatever was about to happen involved Jake specifically, and it was separate from the standard training evaluation. As they walked toward a different section of the facility, Jake's mind cataloged everything he had observed during the exercise. The woman's presence, her transformation from wheelchair-bound observer to active participant, the distinctive sound of her shot, and the reactions of the training staff all pointed towards something planned and purposeful. Peterson led him to a small observation building that Jake had noticed but never entered. As they approached, he could see several figures through the windows, including what appeared to be senior officers whose presence at a routine training exercise seemed highly unusual. The mystery was clearly about to deepen rather than resolve. Inside the building, Jake immediately recognized the atmosphere of a formal briefing room, complete with video monitors and recording equipment. But what caught his attention most was the woman from the range, now seated at a table with several official-looking documents spread before her. She was no longer the quiet observer from the morning, and the wheelchair was nowhere to be seen. Colonel Martinez, whom Jake recognized as a senior officer from Naval Special Warfare Command, stood near the monitors with an expression that mixed professional seriousness with what might have been anticipation. His presence confirmed that whatever was happening extended far beyond the scope of a training exercise. The woman looked up as Jake entered, and he saw her clearly for the first time. Her eyes held the steady gaze of someone accustomed to high-pressure situations, and there were subtle signs around those eyes that spoke of years spent focusing through rifle scopes. This was not a civilian observer. This was someone with serious shooting experience. Peterson gestured for Jake to take a seat across from the woman, while Colonel Martinez moved to activate the room's video displays. The screens came to life, showing multiple camera angles of the shooting range, and Jake realized that his entire exercise had been recorded from perspectives he had never suspected existed. The woman extended her hand across the table, and when she spoke, her voice carried an authority that had been completely absent during her earlier presentation as a quiet observer. She introduced herself as Sarah Chun, though Jake suspected that might not be her complete identification. Her handshake was firm and controlled, exactly what he would expect from someone with serious weapons training. Colonel Martinez began to explain the situation, but his words were interrupted by the sound of the woman's voice requesting permission to show Jake something specific. She reached for a device that Jake recognized as a ballistic computer, the kind used for extremely long-range precision shooting. The numbers on its display were far beyond anything they had attempted during the day's exercise. As the video displays showed various angles of the morning's shooting session, Jake began to understand that he had been participating in something far more complex than a training exercise. The cameras had captured not just his team's performance, but specifically his individual shooting and his reactions to the unexpected elements that had been introduced. Sarah Chun activated a particular video sequence that showed Jake's position during the moment when the distinctive shot had been fired. The camera angle allowed him to see his own reaction in detail, and he realized that his response to that unexpected gunshot had been part of what was being evaluated. The video continued, showing the source of the shot that had caught Jake's attention. Sarah had indeed been the shooter, but the target she had engaged was not part of the standard exercise setup. Instead, she had been shooting at a distance that Jake estimated to be nearly 1,500 yards, well beyond the range that most military personnel would attempt. Colonel Martinez paused the video at the moment of Sarah's shot and activated a split-screen display. One side showed Sarah's firing position and technique, while the other showed the distant target she had engaged. Jake's experienced eye immediately recognized the level of skill required to make such a shot under the conditions present that day. The target Sarah had hit was revealed to be a precision measurement device that had recorded the exact impact point of her bullet. The numbers displayed on the screen showed a level of accuracy that impressed even Jake, whose own shooting abilities were legendary within the SEAL community. This woman was operating at an elite level that few people in the world could match. As Jake processed what he was seeing, Sarah began to speak about her background. Her words revealed a career in competitive shooting that had spanned over 2 decades, including multiple national championships and international competitions that Jake had heard about, but never witnessed firsthand. But her competitive background was only part of the story. Sarah explained that she had spent several years as a civilian contractor, providing specialized training to military and law enforcement units in advanced marksmanship techniques. Her expertise had been sought by organizations around the world when they needed to push the boundaries of what was possible with precision shooting. The revelation of Sarah's true identity and capabilities began to illuminate why Jake's reaction to her unexpected shot had been so carefully recorded and analyzed. His ability to maintain focus and performance while processing unexpected tactical developments was exactly the kind of trait that higher-level military operations required. Colonel Martinez activated another video sequence, this one showing Jake's complete performance throughout the exercise. The analysis revealed that despite his obvious awareness of the unusual elements introduced by Sarah's presence and shooting, his own accuracy and timing had remained virtually perfect throughout the session. The implications were becoming clear. Jake had been selected for this exercise not just to demonstrate his shooting abilities, but to show how he performed when faced with unknown variables that required split-second assessment and adaptation. His response to Sarah's unexpected participation had been a test of his tactical awareness and decision-making under pressure. As the briefing continued, Jake realized that this encounter with Sarah Chun was likely the beginning of something much larger than a simple training evaluation. The level of resources and planning that had gone into orchestrating this test suggested that significant opportunities or responsibilities were being considered for his future. Sarah Chun reached for a thick folder that had been sitting untouched on the table throughout their conversation. As she opened it, Jake caught a glimpse of official seals and classifications that indicated this briefing was moving into territory far beyond routine military training evaluation. The documents inside appeared to contain detailed analysis of his performance over several years, not just the single exercise they had completed that afternoon. Colonel Martinez took control of the briefing as Sarah spread several photographs across the table. Jake immediately recognized them as satellite images, but the locations depicted were unfamiliar to him. The resolution was extraordinary, showing details that could only have been captured by the most advanced reconnaissance systems available to the military. The first image showed what appeared to be a remote facility in mountainous terrain. Jake's trained eye could identify defensive positions, vehicle placements, and structural details that suggested this was some kind of high-value target. The level of fortification visible in the photograph indicated that whatever was housed in this facility was considered extremely important by whoever controlled it. Sarah began to explain the context of the images, and Jake realized he was being briefed on an actual operational situation rather than a theoretical training scenario. The facility in the photographs housed a group that had been conducting activities of serious concern to national security interests. Standard military approaches had been determined to be either impossible or unacceptably risky. As Sarah continued her explanation, she revealed that the challenge presented by this facility was primarily related to the extreme distances involved in any potential engagement. The terrain and defensive arrangements made close approach impossible, while the targets requiring engagement were positioned at ranges that pushed the absolute limits of what was considered possible with current military equipment and training. Jake studied the satellite images more carefully, using his experience to estimate distances and evaluate potential shooting positions. His analysis confirmed what Sarah was implying. Any successful engagement would require shooting at ranges that few people in the world could even attempt, much less execute successfully under combat conditions. Colonel Martinez activated a detailed topographical display that showed the facility in 3 dimensions. The geography revealed why conventional military approaches had been ruled out. The target was positioned in terrain that provided natural protection from most directions, while the few possible approach routes were heavily monitored and defended. The briefing continued with Sarah explaining that her expertise in extreme long-range shooting had brought her into consultation with military planners who were exploring unconventional solutions to the challenge presented by this facility. Her civilian status and competitive shooting background provided capabilities that complemented military training in ways that could prove decisive. But the operation being planned required more than just exceptional shooting ability. It demanded a level of tactical awareness and adaptability that could only come from extensive combat experience. The planners needed someone who could function effectively in the unpredictable environment of a real-world operation while executing shots that pushed the boundaries of what was technically possible. Jake began to understand why his performance during the exercise had been so carefully evaluated. His demonstrated ability to maintain peak performance while processing unexpected tactical developments made him an ideal candidate for an operation where conditions would certainly not match any training scenario. Sarah revealed that the shot she had fired during the exercise had been at a distance that exactly matched what would be required in the proposed operation. Her success had confirmed the technical feasibility of the plan, but the operational environment would present challenges that no amount of range practice could fully simulate. The target information became more specific as Sarah and Colonel Martinez outlined the exact nature of what needed to be accomplished. The facility housed individuals whose continued activities posed an immediate threat to ongoing military operations in the region. Traditional approaches had failed to neutralize this threat, and time constraints were becoming critical. Jake learned that the proposed operation would involve a 2-person team, with Sarah providing the technical expertise in extreme long-range shooting, while a military partner would handle tactical considerations and operational security. The combination of civilian competitive shooting excellence and military combat experience was seen as the only viable approach to this unique challenge. The risks involved were substantial and clearly outlined in the briefing materials. The distance required for the engagement was at the extreme edge of what current technology could support, even under ideal conditions. Environmental factors such as wind, temperature, and atmospheric pressure would have critical effects on any shot attempt at such ranges. Beyond the technical challenges, the operational environment presented threats that ranged from detection by hostile forces to extraction difficulties in terrain that offered few options for rapid departure. Jake's experience in hostile territory would be essential for developing and executing the tactical plan needed to support Sarah's shooting mission. As the briefing progressed, Jake realized that his decision about whether to participate in this operation would need to be made quickly. The time-sensitive nature of the threat meant that planning and preparation would need to begin immediately if the mission was to have any chance of success. Sarah showed him additional photographs that detailed the specific conditions they would face during the operation. The shooting position would be located on a mountainside that offered the necessary line of sight to the target, but also exposed the team to potential detection and counterattack. Every aspect of the mission would require precise execution under extremely demanding conditions. The technical specifications of the equipment they would use were unlike anything Jake had encountered in his standard military training. The rifles, ammunition, and support systems required for shots at such extreme distances represented the cutting edge of precision shooting technology, much of it developed specifically for this type of application. Colonel Martinez emphasized that participation in this operation was entirely voluntary, but also stressed the critical importance of the mission to ongoing national security interests. The threat represented by the target facility had already resulted in significant operational setbacks, and conventional military responses had proven inadequate to address the situation. Jake studied the faces of the people briefing him and recognized the gravity of what was being proposed. This was not a routine military operation or even a conventional special forces mission. This was something unprecedented, requiring capabilities and risk acceptance that went far beyond standard military parameters. As the briefing concluded, Jake was given time to review all the materials privately before making his decision. The combination of technical challenge, operational risk, and strategic importance created a situation that would test every aspect of his training and experience in ways he had never imagined possible. 3 days after accepting the mission, Jake found himself in a classified facility deep within the Nevada desert, where he and Sarah had been conducting intensive preparation for what military planners were calling Operation Distant Thunder. The training regimen combined the most advanced long-range shooting techniques with tactical scenarios designed to simulate the extreme conditions they would face in the operational environment. Sarah's approach to training was unlike anything Jake had experienced during his years in the military. Her methods were based on decades of competitive shooting, where mental preparation and environmental adaptation were just as important as physical technique. She taught him to read atmospheric conditions with a precision that went far beyond standard military training. The equipment they would be using represented the absolute cutting edge of precision shooting technology. The rifles were custom-built systems that incorporated features Jake had never seen before, including electronic environmental sensors that could automatically calculate corrections for factors like barometric pressure, humidity, and even the Coriolis effect at extreme distances. But the most challenging aspect of their preparation was learning to work together as a team under the unique circumstances this mission would present. Jake's military training emphasized leadership and independent decision-making, while Sarah's competitive background focused on individual performance under controlled conditions. Combining these approaches required both of them to adapt their natural instincts. The shooting practice sessions took place at ranges that pushed both of them to their absolute limits. They were attempting shots at distances that represented the furthest confirmed kills in military history, but under conditions that were far more demanding than any previous record-setting engagements. Every variable had to be accounted for with mathematical precision. Jake discovered that Sarah's expertise extended far beyond just pulling the trigger at extreme distances. She had developed methods for reading environmental conditions that allowed her to predict and compensate for factors that would cause other shooters to miss by significant margins. Her ability to analyze wind patterns, temperature gradients, and atmospheric disturbances was almost supernatural in its accuracy. As their training progressed, Jake began to understand why conventional military approaches had failed against their target. The facility they would be engaging was positioned in terrain that created unique environmental challenges, where standard ballistic calculations would be inadequate. Sarah's specialized knowledge would be essential for success. The tactical planning sessions revealed the complexity of what they were attempting to accomplish. Their insertion into the operational area would require coordination with multiple military units, while their extraction would depend on timing that could be affected by countless variables beyond their control. Every aspect of the mission had to account for the possibility that conditions would not match their preparations. Jake learned that their primary target was an individual whose identity was known to intelligence services, but whose exact location within the facility varied according to patterns that had been studied for months. They would have a limited window of opportunity, during which they would need to identify, engage, and confirm their target before beginning their extraction sequence. The psychological pressure of preparing for such a mission was intense. Jake had participated in operations where American lives were at stake, but never one where the technical demands were so extreme that failure was a realistic possibility, even with perfect execution. The margin for error was essentially zero, and both team members understood this completely. Sarah shared details of her background that helped Jake understand how she had developed her extraordinary abilities. Her journey from competitive shooting to military consultation had been driven by a desire to push the boundaries of what was possible with precision marksmanship. This operation represented the ultimate test of everything she had learned over 20 years of dedication to her craft. The intelligence briefings became more detailed as their deployment date approached. The facility they would be targeting had been under surveillance for months, allowing intelligence analysts to identify patterns in the daily routines of the people inside. The timing of their mission would be based on maximizing their chances of engaging the primary target during a period when confirmation would be possible. Jake was impressed by the level of support that had been arranged for their mission. Multiple intelligence agencies were providing real-time information, while specialized military units would be positioned to assist with insertion and extraction. Despite the unconventional nature of their approach, the operation had the full backing of military command structure. The final phase of their preparation involved rehearsing the complete mission sequence using detailed models of the target area. Every movement, every timing consideration, and every contingency plan was practiced until both team members could execute their roles perfectly even under extreme stress. The rehearsals revealed potential problems that required adjustments to their original planning. Sarah demonstrated her shooting abilities under simulated mission conditions, engaging targets at distances that seemed impossible even to Jake's experienced eye. Her consistency was remarkable, but she emphasized that battlefield conditions would introduce variables that no amount of practice could perfectly simulate. Mental preparation and adaptability would be just as important as technical skill. The equipment checkout process revealed the extraordinary resources that had been devoted to supporting their mission. In addition to their primary rifles, they would carry backup systems, environmental monitoring devices, and communication equipment that represented millions of dollars in specialized technology. Every piece of gear had been selected specifically for the unique demands of their operation. As their deployment approached, Jake found himself reflecting on the path that had brought him to this point. His career as a SEAL had involved numerous high-risk operations, but none that combined such extreme technical demands with strategic importance. The success or failure of Operation Distant Thunder could affect military operations throughout the region. The final briefing session included updated intelligence that confirmed their target would be at the facility during their planned operational window. Weather forecasts showed acceptable conditions for the extreme-range engagement they would be attempting. All systems were ready for what promised to be one of the most challenging missions either team member had ever undertaken. Jake realized that regardless of the outcome, this operation would represent a defining moment in his military career. The combination of technical challenge, strategic importance, and personal risk created a situation that would test every aspect of his training and character. Success would require not just skill, but also the ability to perform flawlessly under conditions that pushed human capabilities to their absolute limits. The helicopter insertion had gone flawlessly despite the challenging terrain, and Jake found himself positioned on a rocky outcrop at an elevation of nearly 10,000 feet, with Sarah methodically setting up her shooting system in the pre-dawn darkness. The target facility was visible through night vision equipment as a collection of lights more than a mile and a half away, nestled in a valley that provided natural protection from conventional military approaches. Sarah's setup process was a study in precision that Jake had come to appreciate during their weeks of preparation. Every component of her equipment was positioned according to calculations that accounted for factors he had never considered during his conventional military training. The electronic environmental monitoring systems were already collecting data that would be essential for the shot, she would eventually attempt. The intelligence reports had been accurate about the facility's daily routines, and Jake could observe movement patterns that matched exactly what they had studied during their mission planning. Their primary target would appear at a specific location during a morning briefing session that intelligence had identified as their optimal engagement window. They had approximately 3 hours to wait. As the night gradually gave way to dawn, Jake maintained security while Sarah continued her preparations. The atmospheric conditions were changing as the sun began to affect temperature and air pressure, requiring constant recalculation of the ballistic solutions needed for their extreme-range shot. Sarah's expertise in reading these environmental factors was proving to be every bit as critical as they had anticipated. The communication equipment allowed them to maintain contact with their support teams, but Jake knew that once Sarah began her final shooting sequence, they would be essentially on their own until the extraction helicopter could reach them. The timing of their mission had been designed to minimize their exposure, but success would depend entirely on their ability to execute under battlefield conditions. Jake's spotting scope allowed him to monitor the facility in detail, and he began to see the first signs of the morning activity that would eventually bring their target into view. The intelligence briefings had prepared him for what to expect, but seeing the actual target area in real time added elements that no amount of planning could fully anticipate. Sarah's shooting position was now completely established, with her rifle locked into a system that eliminated virtually all movement while still allowing for minute adjustments based on changing conditions. The ballistic computer was displaying solutions that Jake found almost impossible to believe, involving calculations that accounted for the bullet's flight time of nearly 4 seconds across the mountainous terrain. The waiting period tested Jake's patience in ways that conventional military operations never had. In typical SEAL missions, action happened quickly and required immediate response to changing conditions. This operation demanded a different kind of mental preparation, where success depended on perfect execution of a single moment after hours of careful positioning and calculation. As the sun rose higher, Jake could see increasing activity around the facility through his spotting scope. The morning briefing that would bring their target into view was scheduled to begin within the next hour, and Sarah was making final adjustments to her equipment based on the current atmospheric readings. Every variable was being monitored and accounted for with mathematical precision. The intelligence network confirmed that their primary target was indeed present at the facility and would be participating in the morning briefing as expected. Jake felt his heart rate increase slightly as the moment of truth approached, despite years of training designed to maintain calm under pressure. The technical demands of this operation created a unique form of stress that even his extensive combat experience had not prepared him for. Sarah's demeanor remained completely calm as she worked through her final preparations. Jake realized that her years of competitive shooting had prepared her for exactly this kind of pressure, where a single shot would determine the success or failure of months of preparation. Her ability to maintain focus under such circumstances was truly extraordinary. The spotting scope revealed their target appearing at the expected location, and Jake immediately began the confirmation sequence they had practiced countless times. Visual identification was positive, and the positioning matched exactly what their intelligence sources had predicted. Sarah was ready, with her rifle trained on the distant figure and her ballistic computer displaying the final firing solution. Jake gave the confirmation signal, and Sarah began her final breathing sequence. The shot would come at the natural pause between breaths, at the moment when her body was most stable and her mind most focused. For seconds later, the bullet would either find its target or their mission would be a failure that could not be repeated. The rifle's report echoed across the mountainside, and Jake immediately shifted his attention to the target area through his spotting scope. The distance was so extreme that the bullet's impact would not be visible for several seconds, creating a period of uncertainty that seemed to stretch endlessly despite lasting only moments. When the impact occurred, Jake could see immediate signs of successful engagement through his spotting scope. The target had been eliminated with precision that confirmed Sarah's extraordinary abilities, and the facility's response indicated that they understood they had been successfully engaged from an impossible distance. Operation Distant Thunder had achieved its primary objective. The extraction sequence began immediately, with Jake and Sarah rapidly breaking down their equipment while maintaining watch for any indication that their position had been compromised. The helicopter was already en route to their pickup location, but they still needed to cover nearly 2 miles of mountainous terrain before reaching the extraction point. As they moved toward their extraction point, Jake reflected on what he had witnessed. Sarah's shot had been executed under conditions that pushed human capability to its absolute limits, demonstrating a level of skill that few people would believe possible. The mission's success would have strategic implications that extended far beyond their individual accomplishment. The helicopter extraction went smoothly, and within minutes they were flying toward a safe base where they would undergo debriefing and mission analysis. Jake looked at Sarah, who appeared remarkably calm considering what she had just accomplished. Her expression suggested satisfaction with a job well done rather than the adrenaline aftermath that Jake was experiencing. During the flight, Jake finally asked the question that had been building throughout their partnership. He wanted to understand how Sarah had developed abilities that seemed to transcend normal human limitations. Her answer revealed a dedication to perfection that had consumed decades of her life, driven by a desire to explore the absolute boundaries of what was possible with precision marksmanship. The debriefing would confirm that Operation Distant Thunder had achieved all of its objectives, eliminating a significant threat to ongoing military operations while demonstrating capabilities that would influence future tactical planning. But, for Jake, the most important outcome was his recognition of human potential that extended far beyond what he had previously imagined possible. As their helicopter approached the base, Jake realized that his encounter with Sarah Chun had fundamentally changed his understanding of what individual excellence could accomplish. Her shot from an impossible distance would be remembered as one of the most remarkable achievements in military history. But, more importantly, it had shown him the extraordinary results that could be achieved when technical expertise was combined with unwavering dedication to perfection.